Hi, so I wanted to do a video today about the biggest secret. What could possibly be the biggest secret that people maybe don't quite understand? And that's putting it mildly. So, where to begin? In roughly 2004, I think I became aware of David Icke's material. If you don't know who David Icke is, he's a British researcher who's been on the scene for a couple decades now. He was originally actually a football, English football, so a soccer player, semi-well known, and then became like a sports commentator, and he had some mild recognition in England. And then he had some mysterious experience, awakening through a series of events. And I think even at one point thought that he was like the second coming of Jesus, which was not a huge red flag to me at the time that I became interested in his work, because I didn't believe in Jesus. Not that I thought it was okay for people to claim that they were Jesus, but I took it as like, people say that when they think that, because they think Jesus was an ascended master, and so they think, now I'm an ascended master too. I'm like Jesus. Anyway, that's not my point. This is who David Icke is. So I became aware of his work about 2004, I'd say. Now, when 9/11 happened in 2001, of course, I, like many people, did not know what was happening. I was not in the truther movement at that point. I was not as suspicious or understanding of the ways that the political arena really works. And the first time I ever heard somebody suggest that 9/11 was not, the story we were being told was not the whole story or the real story or the true story, was by Lyndon LaRouche. And I don't know how many people know Lyndon LaRouche is, but he's a politician he's run for president several times, but he's he's an independent and he never gets any traction. And I heard him on a radio show, not an NPR, but maybe it was like Democracy Now! Or something. I don't know. I heard him something, and he made some almost flippant comment about how, America perpetrated 9/11 or something. And I remember, I was so turned off. Like, how could somebody suggest something like that? And it's so cynical and so, whoa, I didn't react to it internally very well. But interestingly enough, as the years went by and my access to the internet and alternative information became more available, it's hard to not see all the holes, at the very least, in the story of 9/11, which for me, as I suspect for many, was the initiator to me going down that truther rabbit hole. So in my early years of research, I did encounter David Icke's work. And his first book, I believe, was called The Biggest Secret. And I remember I bought it. He writes these really thick, big books. I bought it from the Bodhi Tree bookstore in LA, and I started to read it, and I returned it because I couldn't. It was so ridiculous to me at the time that I just couldn't. I just said, this has to be nonsense. So again, if you're not aware of David Icke's research, the gist of it is that there's this reptilian race that has infiltrated the human race, and they're disguised basically with the cloak of a human-looking facade, but perhaps through shape-shifting, they go in and out of their, different sort of vibrational space of being a reptilian, and these are the people who rule the world. They're the elites, they're the royalty, they're the high-level politicians, even celebrities. They're this certain bloodline. And gosh darn it, as I doggedly pursued truth and went down deeper rabbit holes, I ended up circling back to David Icke, and quite honestly, he has some really good videos online where he goes into detail about how this could actually be possible. And it's very compelling. And I can't say, there's a lot of people who say, well, the shape-shifting part is a little outlandish, and unless you've personally witnessed it, how do you know that that's exactly what's happening? But I always thought there's something to this bloodline concept. And then, of course, if you are at all familiar with the History Channel's Ancient Aliens and the whole Anunnaki and Sumerian text idea, it's not that different, except that it's framed in this reference of, well, aliens came here from another planet, possibly Nibiru, and created a more, a slave race. And, but they're this separate bloodline. And so I think that there's a place where it sort of converges where, at least in my mind, it's like, okay, so David Icke has his kind of theory, and now there's this ancient alien Anunnaki theory, which is sort of similar. And heck, even in Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard told the story that, there was some explosion or fight in the cosmos, and these good aliens took all the bad spirits of the bad aliens. This is so ridiculous. And like dump them off here on Earth. And that these are like sort of like the demons or the spirits that that you're basically trying to get rid of in Scientology. So there's always this strange through line, and through my story, if you've obviously listened to the testimony, I mean, I've kind of touched on all these things and been influenced, gotten a taste of what these theories are. And I followed David Icke's work for several years, and I used to, into meeting my husband, and I remember we used to kind of have this debate, because my husband would say, well, I think that David Icke means, and he'd always call him David Icke, means, it's like a metaphor, that these people are reptilians, like because they're evil or they're slimy. And I would say, but that sounds nice, but I'm pretty sure that David Icke, when he's talking about it, he means literally that these people have reptilian DNA and are reptilians, not even fully human. But it's just so much for people to wrap their mind around. And I even saw David Icke in person. He goes around the world touring these presentations, which are impressive. I saw him in Phoenix, Arizona, in a big auditorium. And I remember at the end, everybody claps, yay, disperses. And I had attended by myself. And I just will never forget the feeling I had as it was ending. It was like, well, okay, so now what? What is the point? So I have all this information, and okay, we live in this world that is secretly, covertly controlled by a reptilian race with a very evil intentioned agenda to control all of mankind. And what am I supposed to do about it now that I know this information? And it was just such a clear feeling of like hitting a wall. And I felt like, that's great that David Icke goes around and has dedicated his life to this, but it's like a show. I felt like it was a show because everybody clapped at the end, and then you go home, you go back to your life. You're not really equipped with any tools of what to do next. How do you fight it or counteract it or transcend it in your own life? Or, there's never any real tangible tools. And I feel like anybody who's gone down the truther movement far enough could probably relate to what I'm saying. Whether it's David Icke or another avenue, you get to the point where it's like, okay, well, yes, growing your own food is nice. Most people aren't in a position to do it on any real scale that's going to save their life if there's no food at the grocery store. But okay, growing your own food, being more proactive, refusing vaccines, getting involved with your city council to, really be the resistance at a local level, for instance, like with 5G or with smart meters. And all of these things are great suggestions, but they, to me, and maybe I'm cynical, feels like still like a Band-Aid. I mean, this might postpone, put off some of the plans of the New World Order just to, make it simple. But where's the long term? I guess, again, my cynicism says, these people, God only knows the technology that they have and the ability that they have to overcome populations if and when they really want to. I mean, we hear these stories about how they've used these weapons in Iraq and stuff where they just, armies will just lay their guns down because of, frequency technology. They're frying their brains or squeezing their heads so hard. Who knows? They can, through blue beam technology, they can create apparitions and make people hallucinate. So I've always felt like that's all good and fine, but it's not, nobody really has a solution. And it was always a dead end. And I drifted away from that, I kind of threw my hands up like, this is pointless. So now, circling back around to becoming saved, it's all sort of coming together, because what David Icke and the Jordan Maxwells and the Michael Tessarians and all these guys of the world are missing is the biblical perspective. Because I'm pretty sure all three of those guys I just mentioned, they don't buy into any religion because they see it as just another control mechanism, which I don't totally disagree with. But along with that, they completely throw out Jesus as being who he says he is, the literal Son of God, the Word made flesh. They throw that out. And that, to me, is the missing key. Because without Jesus, it doesn't make any sense. Without the history of the Bible and that story and the apocryphal texts and there's a lot of stuff there, but without that, understanding that history, understanding that mythology is really, a lot of it is truth, none of it makes sense. I mean, okay, so an alien race is here and they want to control us. Well, why this one alien race? If there's billions of populated stars in the galaxy, why this one, Draco, dragon, fish, alien, alligator race? And why us? And nothing computed to me until now. I feel like it's all come together, and it's like, yes, the Bible, they say it's the greatest story ever told. Naysayers say it's because it's just a story, but I think it's the greatest story ever told because that is the story, and everything that we run into in this world is just a recycling of that story. And so you have the Sumerian, and you have the Egyptian, and you have the Greek, and Atlantis, stories of Atlantis. You have all of that, but what we're missing is the context of the Bible and Jesus. So it's really coming together in my mind. Now, there's a gentleman that I came upon recently, maybe recently as in a few months ago, and his name is Zen Garcia, and he is online. He has a YouTube channel. You can look up Zen Garcia on YouTube. And he's a pretty interesting guy. He has spent practically, his whole adult life researching and studying not just the Bible, but a lot of the Apocrypha and the Nag Hammadi codices, and really not leaving any stone unturned and bringing it all together. But the one thing that he absolutely believes is that Jesus is the Messiah. So I really appreciate his work, because I feel like I can trust the direction that he's going in. I don't feel that there's anything deceitful but anyway, you'd have to use your own discernment. But anyway, one of the ideas posited by him and also another fellow, Gary Wayne, and I can put these names or websites in the description box. So if it resonates with you and you want to explore their work, then you can. So what they talk about is the serpent seed. And in short, basically what they suggest, along with others, and this isn't the first time I've heard this, but it's the first time it's really everything I've ever studied sort of came together and makes sense in my mind, is that what the deception was in the garden was Eve was seduced by the serpent. And so there's a theory that she had relations with Lucifer first and then with Adam, and she became pregnant with Cain and Abel. So she became pregnant with twins from two separate seed lines. And those are the wheat and the tares. And they have grown together like cousins side by side on this planet. Now, maybe you think this is outlandish, but just allow your mind to envision everything that you see happening in the world with that in mind for a second. So now it makes sense that there is an elite bloodline. And who are these elite? And why are they the kings and the rulers of this planet? And why do they protect their bloodline so much? How is it that, why, now it makes sense if these serpent seed bloodline exists, that they are the Illuminati, they are the Freemasons, they are the secret societies that have existed throughout time and held so tightly to their vision because they are literally the children of Satan. and there are cousins, and then there are the children of God, and that there really is a battle of good and evil happening on this planet. And when we get off on these ideas of aliens, and then there's all these different kinds of aliens, and there's people out there, I can't think of his name, but they talk about the alliance, and we have our allies, and we have I think it's a distraction, and I think that probably that whole alien myth was even created by the very same people who want to confuse and distract us, because when you come back to the Bible, it's clear as day, that there is such thing as good and there is such thing as evil. And I just wanted to share my viewpoint, and take it or leave it, that there really is another being here that is only partially human, and that is why they could do blood sacrifice and start wars and kill millions of innocent people and have no empathy, have no remorse. And you think, what is wrong with these people? Okay, so I don't want to make this video too long, but there's 2 more things I want to mention. If you haven't seen or heard of the movie They Live, it's a John Carpenter film made, I think, in the early mid 80s. Roddy, what's his name? Rod Piper. Anyway, he was a WWF wrestler guy in the 80s. And he's the star of this movie. And this was not like a big box office movie. But the premise of the movie, and it's called They Live, if I didn't say that, is that he lives in sort of what is the future, sort of this, basically I would say now, there's a lot of unemployment, you see a lot of homeless encampments, but there's also normal life going on. And he's like new to town, and he finds a bag of glasses, and he puts these sunglasses on, and when he wears them, he can identify the people that are actually not human, and he sees them in a very cartoonish way, like these skeleton faces. And every time he looks at a billboard or a newspaper or a magazine or any kind of media, he sees the subliminal message rather than the actual picture or whatever that you think is there when you don't have the glasses on. And it's just an awesome movie, because you look at it and you're like, this is kind of, in a nutshell, what is happening. And the other thing about They Live, live spelled backwards is evil. So it's like they evil. Okay, this is the last thing. So there are 3 times in my life that I believe that I've encountered these beings. The first time, I was pretty young, old enough to drive because I was on the freeway, but I believe I was still living at home. And this is pre being introduced to David Icke or anything. I don't believe, if I remember correctly, that this is before I ever heard of anything like this. And I'm driving in my car on the freeway. You're driving and you kind of casually will, glance over as another car comes next to you. And so that's what I did. I glanced over, and I remember clear as day, it was a silver coupe Mercedes, a really nice, expensive car. And there was a man in the driver's seat, and he was wearing a suit, and he was a white guy. And he turned and looked at me. When he turned and looked at me, and I wish I had a clip of something and I could insert it, but that's going to take too long to find it. But it was like his eyes rolled back in his head. He stuck his tongue out. It was the weirdest thing. It looked almost like cartoonish, and it happened in an instant, and then boom, he drove off. Now imagine you're driving and you see something like that. I mean, it happened so fast. So it wasn't like I almost crashed. It was, I honestly thought, what did I just see? That doesn't make any sense. And like cognitive dissonance, I don't think I ever even mentioned it to anybody, because it sounded so outlandish that how could I describe it? And I just didn't have any frame of reference or explanation. It made no sense. So that was the first time. Then several years later in Los Angeles, so a lot of these people in the City of Angels, City of Fallen Angels, I was in traffic again in my car on La Brea, if you know LA, and not moving. And there was a guy on a motorcycle, and for some, I don't know why, like my attention gets drawn, and this guy, he had a helmet on and like full body gear, so I couldn't see anything except that his visor was up, and he looked right at me as he rode his motorcycle slowly by. And I kid you not, he had like green cat eyes, like the slit or the reptilian eyes. And again, it's like it happened so fast, but it happened slow motion. it happened. I saw it. I still remember it to this day. That was like over 20 years ago. Weird. Now, the third time was more recently. Living here, I live in Washington State now, and this was, gosh, maybe a year ago, a little over a year ago, and I'm at a stoplight. It's always in my car. All three times in my car. I'm at a stoplight, but so here's a crosswalk and the stoplight, and I'm like easily 3 cars back, so I'm not like the first car at the light. And then there's, on the corner, where the crosswalk meets, there's a guy standing, and his back is to me, and for some reason, it caught my attention. And I remember thinking in my head, because his pants were like sagging, and he had like a backpack or something, and I caught my attention and I'm thinking in my head silently to myself, that guy's like, he looks really young from the back, like he's dressed young, but he was like an older guy, and it just kind of looked weird to me. And I'm just thinking this as I'm looking at him. As I'm thinking this and looking at him, he turns around, looks right at me, and sticks his tongue out. And I don't even want to do it because it's gross. Just sticks his tongue out, like right at me, like, I hear you. And this time, I was like, whoa, but I knew in an instant. I remember said to myself, as I was driving home, I was like, whoa, that guy was a demon, or he was demon possessed. I mean, it was weird. They can hear your thoughts. So I don't really doubt this theory, to be honest. And it's just amazing how things have come full circle, at least for me, from the David Icke to this whole, what seems so nonsensical about a reptilian race, to beginning to see that perhaps this is what the Bible is telling us has been happening all along, that there are these people that are not of God, and they are the ones that are ruling this world, which is why everything is upside down. We live in the upside down. There's I could get into the whole, so many other people do it better though on the internet, if you want to get into how the media is constantly revealing stuff. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I just wanted to share that. It's been pressing on my mind, but to me, that's the biggest thing missing in the truther / conspiracy movement is, or has been anyway. I feel like more people are waking up and coming to the feet of Christ, to just understanding that there is no way out if you don't believe in Jesus. It's like there's no way out. There's no meaning. There's no purpose. So it's like, wake up and realize you are a warrior for Christ, and you have a mission here. It's not just trying to preserve your little life. It's bigger than that. It's way bigger than that. Okay. Anyway, thanks for watching. Till next time, be well and God bless.